How's that sound? Is that extortion or is that nice?
It's called holy extortion.
Holy extortion. I think it's in Deuteronomy. I think we get a verse about holy extortion. Okay, so Nate, you and I, you introduced me to Tantra as a practice, and because you were like really excited about the way it reconnected your spirituality and your body, and so you introduced it to me in a practice session in Los Angeles with Christina Kincaid, and I have to say that it was really fascinating. And my wife and I we taught overseas in the Philippines, and have been in a lot of places, probably under the label of missionary. And so when we go to a new community or meet new people, we're always introduced to like a new practice or a new type of food or a new type of way of praying. And to be a good missionary, you just have to immerse yourself in the local culture. So I came to LA and immersed myself in the local culture, which was a way of meditating and becoming one with sort of getting your mind and your body and your spirit in sync, sexually. So, but Nate, I want you to just talk about, you and Christina got introduced, and then what is it that you all did that was really like, took you to I don't know if it took you to the next level, but it sort of started connecting the dots for you. I don't know how I'm going to edit that all in, but I'm just going to let it run. This is unedited. This is Patreon content.
Can I try one where I introduce you? Because let me tell you what really happened here. What really happened is, before I asked Ryan, I was thinking who I could tell, because there was no one else that I think would take me seriously. Like, I was thinking very heavily. I mean, obviously I thought of you first, but as I was thinking you and of others, no one else, when I presented the idea, was even brave enough to even consider hearing me seriously, because this is something that earnestly reconnected my body to my spirit. Like, I was buzzing with life change. It was like coming to Jesus all over again. I had a lot to say, and you were the only one. Well, actually, you responded the way I was hoping you would. I was hoping anyone would. And so I never heard you describe the reason why was because of your openness of being a missionary. And now that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense why the others were not as open-minded.
Well, I like to think of myself as an open-minded Christian, but yes. Well, I'm glad that you were able to trust me with something that I guess potentially I could like hear the word Tantra and get all freaked out and say, "Oh, what are you doing? You got in a cult. Run away. I don't want to hear anymore." Which I did not do that. So
you did not do that. But
I was like, yes, interesting. Tell me, say more about that.
you were probably tweezing a mustache that you didn't even have grown yet. But
yes. Yes, and my monocle. I kept adjusting my monocle while I talked to you on the phone.
And another reason why I told you, well, not another reason why I told you, but I think what makes this work is the type of exercises that I did with Christina. Basically, what would happen is we did this one exercise called the Yab Yum. Okay, the Yab Yum.
Yeah. Spell that. Will you spell that?
Sure. It's Yab Yum is YUM.
Okay.
And yeah, pretty much how it's spelled. I almost want to check this in case I got it wrong.
No, I think that. Yeah, I think.
So Yab Yum is basically, what that means is father, mother. All right. And this is an exercise that, what it's talking about is the divine spirit, right? The energy, it manifests between two beings, one taking the masculine role, one taking the feminine role. And so this can be two guys, this can be two girls, whatever. But it's the dynamic is kind of like dance. At some point, someone takes the lead, and that's how the dance works. So there is no power struggle. It's a synergy. So the masculine tends to hold space and the feminine tends to receive. And so Christina, my teacher, she would be the masculine. She would hold space, and so she would sit in a. Sometimes you can sit Indian style right in front of each other. You don't have to make contact. Sometimes you can climb onto each other's laps, and it looks like you are like, let's say if you're on a swing, like a playground swing. What you used to do as kids, and then like sometimes a kid would sit on your lap facing the other direction. It kind of looks like that. It's called the yum yum. So it is sexually suggestive for a reason, because the sacrum parts of both the male and female, and again, two males can do this and two females can do this, but they're energy centers at that sacrum space. And so when you place those areas together, your body does have a reaction, even though if you're if you're a person of faith and you're celibate, or if you are or whatever, it's like your body will still have a reaction. And the positive aspects about this is that you can work with those energies without having to take it further. You don't have to go with this person to have sex. You don't have to go and have an orgy. You can feel the life energy of sexuality starting to circulate by just staying in this position alone, or even just like looking with eye contact alone. And it's, for some, when they give in to this experience, they can become orgiastic. Okay, this does not mean that you're busting your pants, and wetting yourself. It doesn't mean that you can have it. But when you do give in to the sensations, it's kind of like you're doing a sexy dance. You can get kind of turned on and so forth, right? And that's the exercise that I was first doing with Christina, and this is why it was really important to have someone like you there, because if you can imagine, listeners, if you are sharing space with a buddy or a friend or something, and they're not your lover, but they're kind of going through some subtle orgasmic experiences, it can be kind of awkward. It can be kind of an awkward thing. So that's what makes this exercise so sacred. It requires a lot of reverence. And when the reverence and the trust is there, and the sexual energy arises as life energy, right? We're not talking about like, we're talking about the positive side of it, the life energy. The trust that you have between those two people to articulate it and to talk about it afterwards is amazing. And to me, that was the benefit of learning and growing with sexual energy without having to indulge in sex in a way that it can really get out of control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I was struck by it. There was this overwhelming sense of acceptance. So whereas we tend to judge ourselves or feel judged by another person, there's like this presupposition. There's just no judgment. There's complete acceptance. And you're saying sort of orgiastic. That's maybe that's the right term. It was certainly an ecstatic experience, or it was sort of erotic in a more non-genital way, I guess. So if people are sort of imagining it, there's a sort of charisma to it, a sort of charismatic sort of spirit about it, but not sort of a writhing, I'm trying to get off kind of sexuality about it. Yeah.
If we're speaking frank terms, it's less bump and grind and more dancing.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. I didn't have the words for it, but you did. So, what was the, yes. So you, and how did this practice for you? So I think this is a spiritual practice, but not a religious practice. So this is not a practice of any particular religion, but is certainly spiritually grounded. It's a very, very reverent, very respectful. How do you feel like it got you back in tune with Jesus? So that is probably something, and maybe we'll put this on the regular podcast too, because that'll be something people, particularly if you've been told your whole life that religious practices of other faiths are really taboo or even evil, then, some of us will kind of get some defensiveness up And
Yeah.
but yeah, to hear that that sort of helped guide you back to Jesus, I'm kind of curious how you feel like that is happening, has happened, or is happening.
Yeah. So this would be, let's see how well I articulate this, because like I haven't been asked this question up front. This is
Yeah,
really
yeah. So this is live, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not going to
live.
whatever he says. It's not live, but whatever he says, I'm not going to edit it. I'm just going to run it, let it run.
If we go to heresy, it starts right here. Just so you know.
Well, we're already, for a lot of listeners, we're already to heretic, but so don't worry about that.
Cater heretics already.
Yeah, and if you're watching the video on Patreon right now, I'm taking a drink from my big cool drink steel cup. Mmm.
Okay,
Cool drink, steel cup drink.
Cool drink steel cup, drink cup, cool steel cup. So what the best way that I can articulate that is what that taught me was how life energy, sexual energy is love in the body. Okay. I had to see sexual energy managed in a very loving, respectful way for me to get that part, because I've only understood sexuality in regards to purity as a Christian. We have to really regard it and worship it and keep it reverent, which there's a space for that. And then there's the casual hookup culture where they're just like going all out, right, with self-discovery. And so both, in my opinion, I felt like neither image was a clear depiction of what life, energy, sexuality can be. And it's that, I don't want to say it's the middle place, but it is for those of us who are born in purity culture, it's capable of more than that. And for those of us in the hookup culture or the app culture, there's more holiness than what we use it for that. So in this middle ground of discovery, this is where I myself, someone who is a Christian, I'm finding myself going into discipleship again. Because once I carry the responsibility of love being sexual, once I have that responsibility of love being sex in the body, I realize then that there's a dangerous way I can love people. There's a dishonest way I can love people, which isn't loving at all if you're dishonest, because that's love is all being honest. And there's an honest way of loving people and just being upfront with each other's intentions. And so I've learned that as a Christian, we have that container in our hearts. When we become followers of Christ, we emulate Christ. We carry him in our hearts, right? We don't necessarily have to we don't have to walk the same way as Jesus did in that time. That was limited at that time. But there's a sense of interpretation we're responsible for, right? So all of this autonomy of my faith came back to me. Before, I didn't feel like I had any autonomy. I felt like I belonged to a dogma. And working with sexual energy as life energy reminded me how if sexual energy is kept in dogma, it can really confine it. But if we walk around with it in our hearts and own it, we're basically learning to be a Christian again, and we're carrying the powerful force of sexual love energy. And that's how it helped me with my faith. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, no, it did. It does. It does make sense. It does make sense. I think
That was my first
you
go, man.
said a lot, so yeah, I'm trying to think of my
What do you think about sex as being love in the body? What do you think about that notion?
yeah, because what you're practicing isn't a solely genital sexuality. So like in the last episode when we were talking to Bill Staten about the washing of Jesus's feet and the washing of the disciples' feet and this very sensual image of connectedness. I think in conservative church culture, we would tend to say, oh, well, washing feet was standard and you would never eat a meal without washing feet. And therefore it was just a routine thing that everybody did, and it's not really something you can just skip over the passage, basically, as if it wasn't that important.
Yeah.
Or it's only symbolic in as much as it represents servanthood. But the idea that, yeah, well, first century Jewish people had very sensitive feet, just like we do. Like the feet are the same feet, that, I guess that, to what I heard you saying was you started practicing a kind of an integrated self where
Yeah.
the sexual part of yourself was not having to be compartmentalized away from your intellectual or your physical self in order to practice your religious beliefs. Is that right? So
Yeah. Well,
you don't have to pretend like what you said in that last episode was, if you were going to be honest, it was you got a little aroused in the foot washing at church, though there was no space for that to
yes.
even be considered in that community, even though it was
Correct.
probably a reality that everybody, had that flicker of energy, but
Yeah.
there's no teaching to tell you what to do with that energy. Uh,
Correct.
yeah.
And so you
And no practice. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you feel guilty if you start receiving it, and you also feel a little guilty if you start giving it. But what I understand now, and this is what Bill Staten really helped me articulate, is the foot washing. It really can be a sensual thing, and it can be a sensual thing between brothers. And when you put here's the thing, right? Don't look at it as putting the sex in the foot washing. That's kind of weird. But if you put the love into the foot washing, that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. Hence, if you were to feel love in your body receiving it, you can hold that. But if you were to say, "Oh, I'm getting aroused receiving this," what am I going to do with that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, no. So it's just like what I found, and of course, this is something that Christina has corroborated in the book that she co-authored, um, which also talks about sex being love in the body. So I'm taking that wisdom from her in that book that she did, and when I apply this to me into Christendom, into my exercises of foot washing, into my exercises of prayer, into my exercises of giving someone a hug, a hug doesn't have to be a sleazy, gross, sexy hug like I want to have sex with you. If you just simply hug someone and let your love happen, you're going to feel it. It's going to feel like that, well, maybe I should let go a bit sooner. But maybe you don't have to. Maybe that is the love that we're ashamed of. And if you just kind of like hold on to that just 3 seconds more, let it have that space and put it in that part of your heart that it's love, not the part of your heart that's judging it, wondering if it's sex. You'll that feeling will come across and you won't be as confused or dodgy. And that confusion and dodginess is what's really causing that weirdness of tension,
Yeah. 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 The only way you can think of touching is to go, well, the only touching of the opposite sex I know of leads to intercourse. Like if that's your only framework for understanding touch, then right, it's always going to be awkward because you don't have a presupposition of love or that framework for saying this is an act of genuine care for another person that we're sharing.
Yeah.
And I don't even have to consider genital contact in this moment. Not that it's wrong if that flashes into your head, but it sort of lets you off the hook that every touch has to turn into a makeout session or something. But that's sort of implicitly that's what we teach in Western culture, right? That we don't, we don't touch other people unless maybe a handshake, and then when you are touching someone, it must mean something that's sort of sexual and maybe aggressive. And that's no doubt, yeah, that's an American thing too, not just a
Yeah.
Christian thing.
Yeah, exactly. And this makes me want to ask you a question, because when you went to see, like when I asked you to come to Los Angeles and you came out to have a whole weekend with Christina, you did pretty much some of the same exercises that I did. And so I would love to hear what your experience was
Yeah.
during one of those. Choose whatever you want to tell, and just
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
us what you
yeah.
felt.
So we did we did the embrace, this Yab Yum embrace, and it was very as all the things I just said about how Americans view touch. That's pretty much how I have grown up. You know, that uh, the kind of awkwardness, like I have friends who I feel affection for, and I feel, as a grown man now, I feel like I can hug them, but there are definitely times when you're like, oh, uh, you'd like to give a friend a hug, and you can tell they want to hug you too, but maybe it's not an appropriate context, and so it's just kind of awkward or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, I say all that to say I don't have close physical contact with another woman very often, like at church, hugging other women at church or hug. But
Yeah.
so I was extremely nervous. But I was in my head, I was like, I'm going to be a good missionary. I'm going to be a good missionary.
You
and
know,
and but it really yeah, I had what it made me do, what it invited me to do, I should say, was um really consider all of my um like my self-consciousness about my body, my fears about what other people might think,
mm,
my um you know, what if I don't know, what if there's a secret camera and there's a video of this on the internet of me in the arms of another woman? Um
yeah,
and that kind of thing, that paranoia, my Protestant paranoia. Um yeah, but at the end of the day, I felt like everyone should have people and live in a community where they can have wholesome, loving touch by another person without any fear of judgment or um
wow.
yeah. And that is what from Christina, that's what I got. That's what I got. And
That's
and I
cool.
have that with some friends for sure, but I think that's not common.
Wow. That's that's good. Like,
I
because
should I should write her and tell her.
prior to it, I think
Yeah,
this is sort of your character.
Dr. Kincaid. I meant to
Um,
tell you.
I meant to tell you what you taught me. And you'll speak with a little English accent, just because that's what people do when they talk about things in the future.
Yep. Yeah, and British. Everything in the future is British.
Thank you very much for
Weird.
accepting the Academy Award for this documentary on churches